All right, welcome to the application clinic for US graduate applications. I'll just quickly walk you through what today's session will look like. First, I'll give you a brief introduction of Project EduAccess and the work we have been doing. After that, I'll dive into one of our initiative, that is a study in United States series. I'll share what we planned for that series and how far we have come. Next, I'll take a moment to introduce you to our incredible panelist. And then that is it. I mean, the session is pretty much open. The floor is pretty much open for you to ask as many questions as you can to our panelist. We'll, and all right, we are very excited to engage with you. Now, this is the part where I talk about Project EduAccess. We believe that in South Asia and many other regions, higher education, leadership opportunities, and jobs, they remain largely inaccessible due to some potential tangible and intangible barriers. Uh, Project EduAccess was launched in 2021 as a nonprofit initiative with the mission of improving access to higher education for learners from marginalized communities, particularly in Global South. And we do that by adopting some techniques which we call initiatives. We have 4 initiatives. The most popular one is mentoring, counseling, and role modeling. And I'm sure a lot of you are part of. That's the most popular and sought out after our initiative. We also take a lot of initiative in improving access to information by organizing public workshops like this one. We also work on capacity building and leadership skill development. We do some evidence-based advocacy. Uh, Currently, we are operating in South Asian countries, including India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Afghanistan. And we are working towards expanding to more jurisdictions super soon. That being said, our study in USA series was a 5-week long journey, and this session is the last session of what we have planned. In the previous weeks, we covered various focus topics like graduate application to Ivy League, and then we moved towards some topics like graduate application in STEM, PhD application, scholarship and funding, and applying for MBA program. This final session, what we call USA application clinic, is our final session where it is on you to ask anything about USA graduate application, and it will be dedicated, our panelist will be dedicated to answering your question. So we'll make sure to address any concerns you have about the application process or scholarship opportunities. Having said that, if you have missed any of the sessions which is displayed on this PowerPoint, do not worry, we have it all recorded, and we periodically have put all those sessions on our YouTube channel. So whenever you are free, you are free to check them out. Now, let me introduce you to our awesome panelist. We have Sarah with us. Sarah is doing her PhD in Communications and Media from University of Michigan. We have Shahwar with us. She's pursuing her PhD in Ethnomusicology from University of California, Los Angeles. We have Pooja, who is doing her PhD in Political Science from Boston. And finally, we have Anwita. Now, as you can see, our panelists do not only bring their academic expertise, but they also bring a lot of linguistic diversity. They are comfortable in answering your question in English, Hindi, Bengali. So if you're comfortable in asking in any of those given languages, please feel free, and they'll try to address your concerns in the language which suits you the best. Uh, all right, so finally we have come to the best part of this presentation, the question and answer round. I'll stop sharing the screen now. You can come up on this screen. You can raise your hand, turn on your camera, ask questions, or if you're not comfortable in asking questions via audio or video, you can drop it in the chat box. All right. Do we have any questions as yet? Okay. Uh, I don't think we have any questions as of yet, but I do have some questions. So, when I was applying for my application, I incurred a lot of, problems. I mean, I couldn't recognize what is the distinctive factors which, let's say, distincts Ivy League university from other universities.
Go fuck your.
I'm sorry.
All good, Vatsala. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, can any one of you please tell me that what is the difference between, we hear a lot Ivy League universities and other top universities. What are the distinctive factors which separates these two class of education institutions? Sarah, will you please begin?
Yeah, so I can say from perspective of PhD, like while I was finalizing, like what was the distinctive factor, I think funding is one of the biggest distinctive factor with respect to Ivy Leagues. And there's also a distinction between Ivy Leagues, R1, R2, and R3 universities. So funding, Ivy Leagues will offer the best fundings. They have a big name, so they are way more resourceful. Um, and I also looked at the number of courses that I would have to teach as a TA or as a GSI. So with Ivy League in R1, you're supposed to work, or you are only supposed to GSI, that is, become a graduate student instructor for one course. Whereas with other R2 and R3, like it increases and it is supposed to be done along with your coursework. So that is why I categorically only focused on R1 universities, and like a couple of, like, I applied at 5 places. So I just applied at one Ivy League and 4 R1 universities based on the basis of the workload that I would have to face. Yeah.
Perfect. Yes. Pooja, would you like to add anything on it?
And just one thing, I think Sarah's covered most of it. But generally, IVs tend to have like a really broad focus in terms of the kind of courses that are available to you. Ivy Leagues do tend to have, because they have a larger pool of faculty most of the times. So you would probably have more faculty who are working on a couple of different topics. So it always offers you breadth. And the type of courses available to you are also different in Ivy Leagues, especially if you're going to somewhere like MIT, etc. They do have very particular ways in which they want to teach. That's something that I was very clear that when I was applying, I didn't apply to Ivy Leagues at all, simply because they have a very set pattern in what they want from their candidates. So, for example, when I was doing political science, I knew that if I apply to somewhere like MIT, they're heavily focused on quantitative methodologies, and they don't generally have that much space for maybe mixed methodology or qualitative and interpretivist methods. So you need to make sure that what kind of flexibility the program offers, you need to keep that in mind.
Of course. Anvita, would you like to add anything on this?
No, they have covered almost everything, but I would like take the questions from the chat box because like I see them appearing. So
All right.
so like for the SOP part, I think it's important to like, so basically, if I remember it correctly, an SOP is right, is about 1,000 word limit. So like the word limit for an SOP is up, I believe it was 1,000 in my time, but it might vary from like each university. Some universities might ask you for an SOP and a personal statement, something like, because I had to go through that in terms of NYU in an application. So in terms of how much personal information you're going to give, it's going to be pretty much limited, because in those 1,000 words, you have to make sure that your SOP basically tells a story as to why you'd be a good fit in the department. You need to list or enforce what projects you have undertaken. For example, you are willing to work under a particular supervisor, and say their research and your research sort of combines, or you guys have something in common. So you have to like highlight your research, whatever you have done, using the star approach. Generally, I would keep my personal background to be a para. So for example, if I start the SOP, I would keep the first para as my personal background, and maybe I would then start connecting how my coursework that I have done before is a good way, or makes me a better fit for the university, or how a project that I've done before. So basically, I would like focus more on the academic part and a little less on the personal part. Of course, I'm not saying that just swing to the other extreme and do not write anything, just directly jump into your projects, but just like don't make your SOP sound like your autobiography, if that makes sense. So like an SOP is a formal place, the way you need to craft your statement so that they can understand exactly what your background is. So for example, how you are in my case, how I was interested in chemistry, just a brief one line or something like that, and then like what coursework or where I am from. So I wrote the name of my institutions, for example, and the coursework that I've taken, and then what projects that is relevant in the department and that I have already done is a common ground between me and my supervisor. Pretty much that, and then the list of 3 supervisors that I had to identify for like each university. So make sure you're doing that, because otherwise the SOP sounds really general and your chances of acceptance is not like that high. Because like, for example, if I'm applying to several university and if I have just one SOP without identification of 3 potential supervisor, it just makes them feel like you haven't done your homework. Now, this is very important that you do your homework, which makes me answer your second question, Aryaman, that, well, it is not exactly the research gap. You have to be very specific about a supervisor, because at the PhD level, if you are not sure about which lab you want to join in, you might be in deep trouble, because like you cannot do. So I know that some universities have lab rotation, and this is from my personal experience. People in my university who knew who they wanted to work with are much far better off than people who just, for example, said that, oh, I want to work with inorganic chemistry. So like, that's a huge broad field. That's a huge broad field. Like, what do you mean by you want to work with inorganic chemistry? There are parts to inorganic chemistry. Which part are you focusing on? So it's very, very important that you know exactly which part you want to work with. You might not identify the research gap, because that is like not needed in general, unless and until they are asking you to, for example, highlight or write like, for example, a research proposal, something like that. So unless and until they are asking you to write a research proposal, the research gap, the gap in the question isn't as important as the fact it is to identify a potential supervisor and then try saying that, hey, I have done this and I have read your paper. Say, for example, a paper has been published in 2022, something recent, or 2023, and say, for example, that paper has a part to it which you have done, which maybe not the entire project, but a part of the project that you have done, which is relevant to you, which you know, or like howsoever you want to imagine it. You can always hit them up and say, I don't think so you need to email professors, but like when you meet them, you can always say that, hey, look, here is the project that I did, and this is the work in your lab. So I feel like this is a good way to like start up communication, or I feel like so basically that's how you want to approach the problem, how you want to write the mail to the supervisor, or you want to meet them. But like, this is a good way to like start how you want to, like, which professor you want to work with and why you are choosing that professor. So this goes a very, very long way in like, if you mention this in the SOP, because like, I know it's a little difficult, but I always encourage people to really do your homework, because if you don't, they pretty much figure it out quite easily, to be honest. At least in my experience, I've seen this happen to a lot of people in our batch. So you have to be a little specific. So that's why I said you can identify 3 potential supervisors instead of just one. And sort of like you can always go from there. And that helps.
Perfect. That was very comprehensive, Anvita, I must say. Sarah, do you have anything to add?
It was pretty comprehensive. Like the only thing that I would add is like with respect to like your personal experience, if you're mentioning it, I would say if your personal experience has also shaped your research or your research interest, that is something that should be mentioned because it kind of that is what makes it more relevant. So and because I know there are students from Muslim minority community and even Dalit communities whose research interest is shaped by their personal experiences, I think that is a very important factor that you guys highlight in your SOP and don't shy away from doing that. And I've usually seen like whatever SOPs that I have gone through have like people have been skeptical about doing it. So I would say like don't shy away from mentioning that, and that can also become a very important aspect of your SOP.
Of course, yes. Pooja, would you add anything to it?
I think for the SOP bit, Sarah
Yeah.
and Anvita have covered everything. But in terms of mentioning supervisors and like research gap, if you're doing a social science degree, I think it does become important to mention like the gap in the literature, which is just one way of saying like where exactly. It's not saying that, you know, this hasn't been done before. It may be a little bit different for like natural sciences. But in the social sciences, you just really want to say, well, even if you're adding something to the literature, that's fine. It doesn't have to be like this hasn't been done before. You can just say you're building up to something. The idea of finding a research gap is basically just you telling them that you have a distinctive question. So when you write your SOP, you always mention like, you know, I'm going to be studying XYZ and I'm going to be studying it through methods ABC. So you've already covered the bit on like research gap because you do think that it's an interesting question. You do think that it needs to be explored. And it's really important. So when you're writing for professors, don't just say like, you know, oh, I know that I want to work on gender and this professor works on gender. That's a very lazy way of putting it in your SOP. You do need to like mention, as Anvita was saying, specifically like if they've written a book, if they've come up with a particular conceptual framework, if they've presented a paper that you were influenced by, really need to highlight that. And it's always good to have at least 3 to 4 people in your SOP, because the idea is that what if your primary supervisor has to take, like, I mean, you're not going to be just in touch with your one primary supervisor, even if they are the ones you're in touch with most. But say they're going for a book project, they take a sabbatical, they do anything, the department has to know that you'll benefit from them even when there's like one less point of contact. So it's really important for you to tell them that there's a couple of people that you want to work with. Most universities, especially if you're doing social sciences, will allow interdepartmental collaboration. So mention people. You're more than okay to mention at least and at most one person out of the department, because that shows that you know are not just that you've done your homework on the university. So you can also look into that. And in general, I just had a comment, like if you're writing your questions, if you know you have a field that you're looking at, it's really good if you can mention it, because sometimes some things do differ, I think, in social sciences, natural sciences, or other liberal arts like English, literature, etc. So just mention like which subject that you're looking forward to.
Perfect. That was very informative. This one issue which we which is flagged in all of our webinars. Then funding for master student. I mean, I understand that you guys are doing your PhD, but I'm sure that you must have been also somewhere at some point of a time dealt with this particular issue. What would you have to say? Yeah, Pooja, you can go on.
So for funding for masters, I think it is trickier to get it in the US, to be very honest, because the masters here are sort of not that integral to the way they design their um, courses. Like usually you have because bachelor students are technically also allowed directly to jump to PhDs, so they don't necessarily see masters as like the most distinctive courses most of the times. Having said that, I think most universities will have a internal scholarship that they grant. I know some colleagues who've done it, and mostly you can apply for like the university will have it mentioned on their website that master students are more than welcome to apply to following grants. If you don't know if funding is particularly a problem and there's no internal scholarships, there's obviously, I think Project EduAccess has some scholarship listed on their website. Again, I didn't apply for masters in the US, so I'm not very sure of what those look like. But you can also write to the department that you've applied to and tell them that funding is particularly an issue for you. Sometimes they might end up telling you these are the external partners we collaborate with, and you can apply to them for scholarships. And at other times, if they have some other funding that they can divert to you a minimum amount, or they can somehow, because if they've taken you in and they want you as a candidate, they will try to do some adjustments. Not all the time, but sometimes it happens. So it's always good to write to your program coordinator and tell them that I would really love to join, but it's like a funding issue for me. And if they know any potential sources, they'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just add on to what Pooja said. So I also did not do my master's in the US. I did it from India and then moved to US for a PhD. But another way that I've seen a lot of my friends who are doing their masters in the US figure out the funding package is by offering to work as research assistant or a teaching assistant with the professor. So you can look at any faculty member, and if there's anybody whose research interest or work is pretty interesting, you can reach out to them directly and ask them if they have any project where they're looking for a RA or a TA, and it covers the tuition fees for that particular semester or particular year when you volunteer to do TA. I'm not very sure about the nitty-gritties of it, but I do know that people have navigated that space through this. So either reach out to the faculty, or as Pooja mentioned, reach out to the graduate coordinator, explain this problem to them, and also in addition to funding, ask if there are any positions of TA or RA or just any other positions which might be open where some whoever has applied can volunteer so that they can cover their tuition fees.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Sarah. Anvita, do you have anything to add on to this?
No, I mean, it's pretty much comprehensive. It's pretty much covered. I think they also mentioned that, well, most PhDs in US are like funded, so you don't have to apply for like external funding. Master's funding, they're like super, super competitive. I never got a master's funding, so I did my master's from India, to be very honest. I was never the bright kid who can back scholarships by writing scholarship essay, never. So I did my master's from India. But most PhDs in US are actually funded. They pay you either using the GA funding, the graduate assistantship funding, which is generally done by your supervisor, or the TA funding, which I do because I'm in my second year. So that's basically you need to teach undergrads 10 hours per week or 8 hours per week based on the university that you attend. And they would be giving you a monthly stipend. That's pretty much comprehensive. You will not die hungry, you can live well, and you will be fine. So I always want to mention this to everybody, all prospective students, that you are independent, you will be fine, you don't have to take money from home. In fact, you can also save and send money back home, so you are all good to go.
Thank you so much, Anvita. Thank you so much for that. Going back to PhD application process, I think Ariman has a follow-up question. He says that he's from the physics background. He approached a supervisor for a PhD with academic details, and she said she would be happy for the application and advised to apply to a particular department. But I have to mention other two professors. How do I do that?
So I can take that question because like I know somebody like that. So in my department, so I'm from chemistry. So in my department, for example, I have just one supervisor, because like I don't work as a collaborative project, but some of my classmates, they have two supervisor, which means that their primary supervisor is, say for example, Professor ABC, and their second supervisor is XYZ. So like what happens is that maybe from what I understood from that question was, maybe he wants to work with a particular person, but they have a collaborative project. So sometimes professors do that. Basically, they do that all the time. So they have something called the collaborative project, and 2 or 3 professors might just work in together, because it makes the research a little more comprehensive, a little more like meaningful, I'd say. So sometimes they have funding. They don't have direct funding, because for example, that project which is in my department is funded by the NIH or the NSF, the National Science Foundation. So those projects are not given to one particular supervisor. They are like, that project is divided into like 3 parts with like 3 people working on it, each independent of the other, but somehow dependent. So collaborative students generally have, in my department, they have 2 supervisor. The major supervisor who they work with, who they are enrolled with, and the second supervisor, which is the collaborative student supervisor, who basically guides the student with parts of the project that the major professor does not know. So if that is the case, and if like your primary supervisor has given you a green signal, maybe you can like email the other 2 or the other 3 supervisor, as she has asked. Maybe you can just email the other supervisor saying that, hey, maybe is there, I'm sure you are looking at a particular project or a particular paper, for example. So like you can say that, hey, you published a paper in so and so journal in this and so year, and like I'm interested in this. So like say Professor Mary was happy to accept me as a grad student, and she wanted to like let you guys know that I am willing to apply to the department, or like whichever department you're coming in. And you can also say that, so this is the work that I'm interested in majorly, but then given that this is a collaborative project, I have also done parts of projects maybe which is relevant to the work that you are focusing on, papers that you have like published or something like that. And in overall, you can say that this is basically a good idea, or maybe this is helping us to like, how should I put it, like maybe this is helping us to like figure out a direction to the collaborative project, and maybe that is gonna be helpful, like basically some, in short, something like that. So like you can craft like an email, or if they're asking you to put it in your SOP, craft something like this, that hey, these are your work, these are my work, and this is how they all combine, this is how they all merge, and this is why I'm applying to this department or a particular supervisor or for a collaborative project, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anwita. That is really, really helpful. Pooja or Sarah, do you have anything to add on it?
I'm not very familiar with how collaborations work in
Yes.
physics.
Okay, so we have a question. Oh, guys, Shahwar is here. Welcome, Shahwar. You
I
can.
think that's a question from Tanvi that's been there in the chat for a while, which is that it's important to have a small personal statement in the CV or resume. So I think mostly you have like a 2 to 3 liner on a CV or personal statement on your CV, and it's not necessarily a personal statement. It's just like a very short description of you. It's not nowhere near compulsory. Every time I've applied to anywhere, be it the UK, be it US, be it outside UK, I've never had description. Like that's more of if you're applying for a job because you really want to say what kind of like worker are you, sort of thing. So like you can obviously tell them that you worked and you had a thesis on this, or your research interests are this, but that will get listed anyways as part of your CV. So you don't necessarily have to do it. It's always good to do that when you're applying for jobs, because you want to tell them you're detail oriented, you're this and that and all of that. But in my experience, it's not that necessary. If you don't have that small description box in your CV, it's fine. But if you want to are on the safe side and have it, you can just say that you are a, you've basically what your research interests are. You've studied interdisciplinary work, or what are the research methodologies you work with, something like that. Just very short description of basically things you've studied and things you want to study. That's it. That's what you want to put there. Yeah, nothing about your personal identity as such. That doesn't go there.
Yeah, there's a question from Nandini. She says, for my LORs, my PI for whom I have been working with for 2 years can't be my referee. So I'm seeking assistance from just my professors. Is that an issue?
I can take that up. I don't think that should be an issue. It's completely okay. You can, the only thing that you should keep in mind is like the professors highlight all the talking points that you want them to mention in your LOR. And in case, like, I also faced some trouble because one of my professors had left the university where she taught me, and she couldn't access her university email ID. Or there was another problem with someone not being able to write it on the institutional letterhead. So it's always helpful, like whatever issue you're facing, that you reach out to the graduate coordinator of the university, let them know this problem, and just let them know whatever the problem you're facing, and ask them if there's a way that you can navigate that, because they can still, accept it or might help you out with a solution. So don't hesitate to reach out. But if your professors are writing, that's absolutely okay. Just ensure that they mention all the talking points that you want them to highlight.
Perfect. Nandini, I hope this answers your question. When I don't think we have any other, oh, we do. Okay, so there's a question from Shabaz. He's saying, I'm doing my master's from USA. Question first is, when is the ideal time to start PhD applications? I mean, Pooja, would you like to take it first?
So it depends how well you know what you want to write on your personal statement. I will always say that a 4-month window should be minimum. The last 1 month you will probably just spend doing all your making sure all your documents are there. You want to have this time to make sure that you can get your LORs in, which actually take more time than you think they do. I think in my experience, I've learned that when I started doing these applications, I always underestimated the amount of time it would take me to get an LOR across. You need to convince people, and there'll be a couple of times back and forth in terms of like, okay, what all do you want me to include? Sometimes, most of the times professors will write it for you, but sometimes they still want your perspective in terms of to make sure that they haven't missed anything and things like that. So you really want a lot of time for that. It takes you a week, 10 days to familiarize yourself with everything that the university wants from you, to get in touch with supervisors, to have them get back to you, to have your draft revised a couple of times. Like, I know personally, I wanted at least 4 to 5 revisions on my draft. Like, I sent it to different people, they got back to me, they had really helpful feedback. And you want to make sure, okay, you will go through a couple of drafts, and then at the end, maybe make sure combine 2 or 3 drafts or something like that. So easily takes you 4 months. Anything less than that, I would say, is rushing it, until and unless you're very clear and you're very confident that this is your SOP. The only reason I say having 4 months is also because it's very expensive to apply to PhD. So you don't want to or do any college application. So you don't want to not give your best and spend all that money in your comparative tests, if you're doing like IELTS, if you're giving GRE and things like that. So you want to make sure that you have, if you're giving GRE and IELTS, I would say start before. So make sure that your preparation time for those courses does not come into the time when you're doing the documentation process. Don't do that. You're preparing for your GRE simultaneously. You're going to go and give it, and at the same time, you're also working on your SOP. Make sure that all of the standardized scores are finished. Like, English is fine, it's not that much of an issue for most people, but if you know you don't test well, make sure that you keep the time for that separate before you come to your documentation or whatever, whichever order works for you. If you write to professors beginning in September, it's good. They'll get back to you. They'll also probably tell you that, oh, please write to me closer to the deadline. So it's always good to be like, I was in touch with you in September. Now it's November. I'm rewriting to you to be like, hi, what are your thoughts, etc. So I think August is a good time. If you can start earlier, May, June, even better, but try August, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pooja. Sarah, you mentioned about R1 and R2 Institute. We have a follow-up question on that. That how do R1 and R2 institutes make a difference, particularly for a PhD program?
Yeah, so I would like to reiterate, and Pooja and Anwita, you guys can add to it if in case I miss anything. So with R1 and R2, I guess the main focus is funding. R1 universities are more resourceful, and it's not necessary that all R1 are going to provide you with great funding, but yeah, the stipend is better. The funding packages are better. There are more resources. There are probably more resources to collaborate on different projects as well, so more exposure. And even with respect to the workload and the course load, R1 universities would expect you to work as a GSI or work as a teaching assistant for one course. With R2, it would be two courses, and managing that with your coursework and also doing research can be very overwhelming and can also be burdensome. So I did not like that's categorically why I did not apply. But then not all R1 universities are going to come with great funding. So check out the funding packages when you're applying. Yeah, that is what I would like to suggest. And one more thing, I'm adding a guide. It's sort of a PDF, which is a guidebook for PhD applications in US and Canada for humanities and social science. So that might be helpful for everyone who's applying for a PhD. It's very comprehensive, and I also used it when I was applying. So yeah, that should be helpful.
Pooja, would you like to add anything on it?
So in a lot of the times, the way the universities are classified, R1 and R2, depends on how they hire candidates for job profiles. Actually, it's not directly governed by like how they hire their graduate students, although there's a criteria that you have to provide like a certain amount of scholarships every year. But it's more about the fact that most of the time in R1 and R2 universities, it's just categories about how much time you are required to spend on your research specifically and how much service you have to provide to universities. So just in R1 universities, you'll have like a ratio of probably 80 to 20 or 70 to 30 in terms of that 70% time going to your research and 30% going to service, which can be any type of service, which can be like TA-ship, RA-ship, whatever. In R2, it's probably like a ratio of 60 to 40 or something like that. So it's just a very minute difference. And as Sarah said, it's not necessarily like funding doesn't like R1 universities will not always have great fundings because sometimes R1 universities are also situated in like it depends on where they're situated, what's the cost of living, how many students they admit, and things like that. R1 universities tend to be very competitive. So for people who are very clear that they want to, continue researching after they finish their PhDs, R1 universities are more likely to hire you as compared to R2 universities, and then as compared to universities that are not R1 and R2. So they really also look. So when you write your SOPs, generally it's a good idea to mention at the very end that what you intend to do after you finish this project. Do you intend to continue research? Do you intend to teach? Do you intend to work outside academia? R1 universities usually want candidates who intend to continue research even after they finish their PhDs, because essentially they're producing research scholars and they're not producing like professors, like not specifically like lecturers. Professors, yes, but they're not specifically focusing on creating lecturers, if that makes sense. At least that's how I've learned the difference. But yeah, I'm sure there are other criterias, but it shouldn't be that much of an issue, to be very honest.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pooja. Is Shahwar here? I mean, I can see her in the room.
Yeah, hi, I'm here, but hi, thank you. I was facing some network issues here,
No
but
problem.
yeah, I'm happy to go along. The only issue is that I will not be able to switch on my video for the time being because there's some Wi-Fi issues
No
here. But
problem. No problem
yeah,
at all.
but I'm here and I'm happy to answer questions as and when they come along.
Thank you so much. Could you please add what is the difference between R1 and R2 when it comes to PhD particularly? I mean, a lot of part has been covered by Sarah and Pooja. But do you
Yeah, I think Pooja and Sarah have been like pretty exhaustive with the kind of issues or with the kind of basic differences there are generally between R1 and R2. I would also agree with Pooja that R2 universities are basically catered to producing good, insightful scholars rather than preparing them specifically for the job market via teaching, but more for but they are more invested in creating scholars who would immediately take up postdocs once they are done with their PhDs. So I don't think there's much I can add because Pooja and Sarah were pretty much eloquent on what the basic differences are. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shava. There is a question from Taskeen. She says, would you advise me to apply and give it a shot if I have received only one heads up from one professor in the department and others are yet to respond? So should I just apply? Anvita, would you take that up?
Just go ahead. I did not like email anybody. I applied by myself. I just mentioned it in the SOP that, hey, these are the people I want to work with. Here are my projects, and that's it. So if you have one person who is willing to take you, you're already 25% better off than me. So just apply. It doesn't matter. You cannot expect three people to say, oh my God, I'm gonna take you, unless and until you have an excellent CV, you have a stellar CV with 5 publications in Nature and Science. That's not possible. So just go ahead and apply, because these applications, I know they come with a fee, but the fact that you can apply directly to the university instead of, in the case of Europe, for example, where you have to get a green signal from the supervisor itself, is really advantageous, because sometimes actually you probably will not receive a direct email from the supervisor, but maybe if you apply, if you take that one step ahead, you would see that you already got an acceptance, even though you did not get a solid email from the supervisor. So just go ahead and apply.
Thank you so much, Anvita. That was very much encouraging. She has one more question. That's a very peculiar case. I want to apply for an application fee waiver. There are some requirements. My current institution stating my economic hardship, but I'm currently not employed or studying. In this scenario, where should we get such statements from? Anybody who was...
So I apply. Oh, sorry, Anwita, go ahead.
No. I wanted her to repeat the question, because I sort of zoned out. I'm so sorry, but you
No,
can.
I'll repeat the question. She says, I want to apply for an application fee waiver. There are some requirements. My current institution has to state my economic hardship, but she is neither employed nor studying. So there is no institution she can obtain that statement from. So she's asking, where should we get such statements from in that case?
I really don't know. I'm sorry. I wouldn't be able to help in this. Sorry.
Yes.
So
Yes,
I
Pooja.
applied for a couple of fee waivers, and I was lucky to get some of them. If you don't have an institution, you can always attach an ITR that you have that lists how much you earn in a year, what is your current status, etc. You can also tell them that if your employment contract or your student, like your university, ended a specific time ago, it's okay, more than okay. It really is how you frame it. You can also tell them that you depends on, like, so for me, for instance, when I was doing my applications, I had some health issues that I was taking care of, etc. So I did tell them that even though I was working, a big part of my salary was going towards just covering medical expenses and things like that. So you are more than, and just make sure that if you're mentioning something, you have bills to attach or some documentation to attach. As long as you do that, it's fine. Again, if you're not sure how that works, please write to the program coordinator, tell them that you don't have an institution that you're affiliated with at this particular moment, but you do have documents clarifying that what your economic or financial like means are. They'll be more than happy to take it. Will they give it to you or not give it to you is a different question. But it's okay to apply regardless of like an institutional affiliation. I know a lot of people who, not a lot, but I know a couple of people who've done that and gotten their fees waived. And it's always in any at any point of time, if you feel like the program is demanding for something particular and you don't have it, please write to their program coordinators. They're very helpful. They'll always get back to you really early, and they're very helpful in detailing what's an alternative path you can take. So it's that. And yeah, make sure if you're taking care of, or you can also mention the reason that you don't have an institutional affiliation. So if you're taking care of a family member, if you've just recently finished education, you're unemployed, you can simply say unemployed. You don't have to be like, oh my god, I didn't get a job, etc. You don't need to tell them. You just need to say that for personal reasons you're unemployed at this present moment, and go ahead with it. You can mention that it's incredibly expensive to convert Indian currency to dollars. They know that, but it's always good to mention it, being like, it's just a hardship for XYZ reasons. Just list a couple of them and you should be good.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you. I hope that resolves the query, Daskin. She also has a follow-up question. She asked, how much should we save for visa and other processes? And does US funding cover airfares as well? I mean, Shahwar, would you like to take that up?
Yeah, sure. I would also like to, before I begin answering this, about application fee waivers. I think in my experience, and I've also seen other people who have come into UC campuses here, it is pretty common to get your application fee waived off, especially if you come from India and South Asian countries. And for most students who are applying for PhD programs, especially in the US, it is kind of understood that you've already established some sort of rapport with your supervisor or would-be supervisor. So the best practice is always to get in touch with your person of interest, with your supervisor. And if you have them in confidence, then it's always good to speak to them very clearly and frankly where you're coming from, because most people who are applying for PhD programs, it's understood that they are not necessarily employed and that they will not be able to fund much of the application, much of the cost which is incurred during the application processes, right? So I know of several students who were able to get their application fee waived, and they did not necessarily have to show any supporting documents for that. You just need to say that you are an applicant from a developing country and that you do not have institutional funding or stipends, which cover it's just enough to keep your basic sustenance going. So I think the best idea is to always be in constant communication with your POI in the program which you're applying to. That is one. And secondly, could you please repeat what her specific
The second
question?
question was how much one should save for the visa and other processes, and does US funding cover airfare as well?
Yes, that's a very good question. Much of the visa cost, at least initially, has to be like borne by the candidate, and it can I think it's under 15K if I'm not wrong currently. So you have to keep around like $150 for your visa costs. Apart from that, like once you have an offer from a campus in the US, especially in the UC system, like in the University of California system, you can actually apply for a relocation cost. So you can, like before your initial stipend has been credited, you can actually get in touch with your home department and with the office, and again like, of course, through your POI, to tell them that you would be requiring some funds to relocate to the US because you're relocating, right? So they should be able to provide you with some starting funds. So this would include your airfare, this would include a part of your rent in the initial, at least in the first month. So this is something which can be negotiated in addition to your funding, in addition to your PhD funding.
Thank you so much, Shahwar. That was extremely helpful. Shabazz has a question. He asks, is it possible to collaborate for research or any other work with other universities, professor or department during masters? I mean, I understand that you guys are pursuing PhD, but have you come across anybody in your network who was doing anything like this?
think
Yes, Pooja.
there's like an institutional network that allows you to do that. It's more once you come to the department and you tell them that there's a professor in place, so and so place, and you want to work with them, the university might allow you to do it in they take it as like a credited thing in terms of if they will transfer credits to you is no, I'm not sure if how that functions. It's common in PhDs, you can sort of go anywhere if your universities allow and just get your credits transferred. In masters, I'm not sure, but it will depend on the department. If you're already in, just ask them, what it's like to what is their position on inter-university collaboration. Interdepartmental collaboration is most of the time fine because it's the same institution, they have the same ways credits apply and things like that. So that should not be that much of an issue. Outside university, it will depend on if they're in the same city, what work do you want to do with them. Like if you just want to do a research assistantship with them and they're paying you, it does not have to be registered through the university, it's fine. But yeah, if you want to get credits transferred, you'll have to ask your university in terms of what their policy is.
Thank you so much, Pooja. Thank you so much for that. We have a question from Trisha. She's asking, is converting our Indian grades into US grades by WES or other systems important before the acceptance?
No, I have never done that, and it's completely useless because so basically everybody's transcript, all your Indian transcripts will have the conversion GPA factor. So like whichever university you go to, basically, because all universities in India also have like different GPA conversion factors, if I can remember it correctly. So they will, towards the end of the transcript, they will give you that CGPA formula which they have used. So as long as you have the official transcript from the university and you are scanning all the 4 pages, they pretty much will just convert it directly, like the US university. So I never went for WES evaluation, and that is not important. And most people that I know of, most of my classmates, most of my friends who are in the US, they never went for WES evaluation at all. So just don't do that.
Thank you so much, Anwita. Thank you so much. Okay, I have a question. I don't think we have any more questions in the chat box. Anybody wants to answer or want to ask a question, please raise your hand or you can just switch on your mic. Okay, Trisha says that she had another question. Trisha had another question. She's asking, is getting admitted into medical schools for grad or PhD courses harder than the state universities, especially considering that they have TOEFL requirements around 100? That's a very specific question. Anyone of you would want to take it? If you have any idea about the medical background at the universities offering medical courses.
I do know that medical school in US, like medical school everywhere, is hell to get into. But if I don't know how TOEFL directly relates to it, to be very honest. If it's a grad program, most of the time TOEFL is like a procedural requirement. Because you're going to be submitting all your application in English, you're going to have everything that sort of shows them you can speak English and you can, do all of that. So if you don't submit a TOEFL score, you can get it waived. If you submit it, you can tell them that you'll retake it if it doesn't, sort of go well the first time. I don't remember what's the high score, like what's the maximum score on a TOEFL exam. It's 120 or something like that. Sorry, I don't remember at this particular moment. But TOEFLs are generally for grad programs. For grad programs and my grad programs, I mean PhDs, and I'm not very sure about medical school, but they're more like procedural requirements. If you qualify for everything else and they like you as a candidate overall, and they'll always let you retake TOEFL. They'll always, it's very rare that they'll disqualify you simply because you didn't have a good TOEFL score. That's more of an undergrad thing because they don't know you at all as a candidate. You've only done high school somewhere. But at grad level, it shouldn't be a disqualification reason.
Thank you so much, Pooja. Trisha, I hope that answers the question. Do we have any more questions? I mean, I do not see. Okay. Shabaz has a question. Can the panel please provide guidance for summer internships 2025 here in the US, as the internship application closed pretty early? I started my master's in 2024. Any idea about internship? Anvita, would you like to go ahead?
So I'm not very sure about internships because like I've never really done them, but during summer of 2024, a lot of people from Cornell University came to University at Buffalo, which is my university, to like, at least in my department, because UB was providing them $1,000, I think, in a month or 15 days, something like that. So basically what they did was their supervisor at Cornell, they sort of recommended the student to our university or a particular supervisor. So like that's how basically they sort of came to UB, or like they got an internship. Alternatively, you can also find internships through LinkedIn if you are there, because I've heard a lot of people finding internships through LinkedIn because professors would post these vacancies, these 3-month vacancies, internship vacancies on LinkedIn. So if you are on LinkedIn, that's a good idea to like maybe look at it. Alternatively, if you're on Twitter, that's also a good place to find internships because professors like use these two platforms very like a lot basically. So that's pretty much that I have to say, because I have not applied for internships in US, so I wouldn't know about it. So like if any other mentors want to answer that, please go ahead.
Yeah. Pooja or Shahwar, do you have had any experience in internships?
No, I wouldn't be able to speak much to that.
You might have a career organization for students sort of thing. So there will be career fairs coming up, and I'm sure November is like the November and December before the schools close. You will have those career fairs. Go to them. You always have like the companies who want to hire students there. Most of the times, people only go to career fairs if they're in their final year because they think that you only go there to get like a job, which fair, but you can always get people, you can always network, as they say, and give your CV to people, get in touch with them, ask them like, can I get your email? I'm interested in interning. They might, they might get you in touch. There sometimes universities have this thing called job listings on their website, which is not always about like full-time jobs. They will have part-time internships that are open to graduate, like master's students and undergrads and things like that. If you also have like, I know Indian universities call them sometimes like placement cells and things like that. Here also you have like career, I don't know what they call themselves, cells or like something
Career
different
services.
kind of a placement cell. You can write to them and tell them that you are interested in doing a summer internship, and they might be able to get you in touch.
Thank you so much, Pooja. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Okay, there was a career fair, but very few companies have international students, as the other companies don't sponsor for the H1B. So they prefer not taking international student. That has been an issue. Yes, I think that is a big issue. What would you want to suggest, Anvita? Do you have anything
You
for
can
this
do about
answer? Yeah.
H1B compliances.
Yeah.
If I mean, depends why you want to do your internship. If it's part of your sort of some programs require that you do internship to get like credit and things like that, like they're required in place of a course. If it's something like that, the university should have a way to get you in an internship somewhere because they would want you to pass that credit requirement. If it's for personal reasons and it's like then circumventing a visa is honestly you apply to a couple of places and see what works out.
Exactly.
I don't think there's like more.
Shahwar has written in the chat that the best idea is to always get in touch with the graduate career center in your university, and I totally uh, get that. Taskeen has a question. She says, "Hi, one last question. Should we have 3 academic references ideally, or shall we balance it with LOR from former internship places?" Um, Anvita, would you like to take that?
Can you repeat that question? Because I was like typing the
Should we
answer for
have
Arya.
3 academic references ideally, or we can balance it with LOR from a former internship places?
So like your LORs can be given by anybody. So like um my internship professor gave me one LOR. My dissertation thesis professor gave me one LOR, and the HOD of the department gave me one LOR. So as long as those people know you academically or professionally, they are good to give you an LOR. It doesn't matter.
I hope that answers the question. The scheme, Shahwar or Pooja, do you have anything to add on to that? I mean, what are the requirements of academic LOR? Can be substituted or supplemented by the professional LOR in your particular cases?
I think in my experience, often the requests are pretty specific and they vary from the kind of school and departments you're applying to. So some places would, for instance, be more insistent on getting only recommendations from people you have worked with in an academic capacity. And in addition to in addition to, for instance, if you were working in addition to studying, what you can do is that to as proof of evidence of your working experience, you can probably bring that in your statement of purpose, which is another document which you submit in addition to your your personal statement. So your SOP, in addition to that, when you are writing a personal statement, that is a place where you can probably bring in your professional growth in addition to your academic training. But it really depends. I mean, it really depends. I mean, it depends on the kind of school and department you're applying to. Most people, most places would not always ask for recommendations from your place of work or place of internship. But it varies again, yeah.
Thank you, Shahwar. Thank you so much. Pooja, what was your experience with the LORs?
I think I did all my LORs were academic, except that those were also the professors I was working with as an intern. So they could speak to that. But like Shahwar said, that it depends on the universities are generally pretty clear if they allow you to supplement it with a professional LOR. It also depends on how long your internship was. If it was like anything less than 3 months, I would suggest not, because they don't know you well enough as a candidate, unless of course in those 3 months you've produced something that was really exceptional and you want it highlighted. For example, I know that someone whose applications I was looking at, they were working on building this robot nanotexing, and obviously that's extremely significant. So you can always include that, but generally you want to have LORs from people who've taught you for at least a semester. So a semester is a good time for them, for them to gauge you as a candidate. Like they can judge you on class participation, they can judge you on how you test, they can judge you on like your ideas, how you write, how well you research and things like that. But yeah, so it's if you think that a particular person has known you for less than a semester's worth of duration, maybe try getting it from someone who can speak more to your experience.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Pooja. Thank you so much. I think we have, we don't have any more questions.
There's one more question which says that regarding LOR, is it necessary to have it from your current institution? But I don't think my project guide can write a good LOR because my project just started. It's more than okay to have it. I think it shouldn't be like 2 years old, but if you've just finished your undergrad program, I think it's fine. But like try, and obviously again depends on how significant the relationship was. If they taught you for like some professors end up teaching us more than one course and they know us for a long period of time, more than okay. But I think you still might need to have one person, because it's not, so you can have LORs from like your older institution, but you still need probably one LOR from your current one, simply because that's the most recent assessment of you as a candidate. Unless of course I know if you've just started your program in this particular institution, they've only known you for 3 months, so it's fine if you just do your other universities.
Maybe just ask your head of the department if they are willing to write. Most HODs would write an LOR for you. So like you can, if your project guide is not willing to, or if they don't wanna, you can always ask the HOD to like write an LOR for you. It should be fine. But it'll be nice if you have at least one LOR from the current institution, because I assume that if you're doing masters right now, you already did a BS, and I would say that you have already, like, it's been 2 years since you graduated your BS degree, or at least a year. So it's going to be nice if you at least have one person from your MS degree who's willing to write it. Can be somebody who taught you a course. It's fine. I mean, it doesn't have to be like elaborate or something like that, but that just gives them a feel that, okay, I mean, this person has somebody in the home institution who's willing to, like, write them, recommend them. So like that gives you a leverage basically.
Thank you so much, Anwita. Thank you so much for that. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions. And I think we have come to the close of this session. We are running way over our stipulated time. So thank you so much, guys. A huge thank you to all of you, all our panelists, for generously sharing your knowledge and experience with us. Your insights have been truly invaluable. And I'm sure everybody has taken something meaningful. And to our audience, thank you so much for being here and for your active participation. Your engagement, questions have added so much value to this session. We hope this session workshop was informative and it is helping you to feel more confident in your application process. Having said that, thank you so much. The recording of this session will be available on the YouTube soon, so you can just follow up or you can revisit whenever you want to in your free time. With that being said, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye. Good.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.